If you've got a home security system, whether it's just a doorbell camera or a full network surveillance system, you probably feel much more secure. But what happens when that sense of security is interrupted by the police knocking at your door? Or worse, they show up with a warrant. I'm Jeff Hampton, former prosecutor turned people's lawyer, and today we're going to talk about something that affects each and every one of us. In this video, I'm breaking down the three main ways police can legally get access to your security footage and what you can do to protect yourself from it. First up, let's talk about emergencies. In life or death situations like kidnappings or violent crimes, police have the right to require you to provide them your footage from your cloud storage. The police used what's known as exigent circumstances or an emergency situation to justify this. This might seem like only extreme situations, but there is sometimes a catch. What counts as an emergency can be surprisingly broad. For instance, a missing persons case or a manhunt for a missing suspect can also qualify under this category. Companies like Google Nest or Ring cameras are required to comply with these requests, but they don't really have to notify you. That's right, your videos can easily be accessed by the police through Ring or Google Nest without you ever even knowing it. Imagine waking up one day and all of your video footage has already been reviewed by law enforcement, and then they come knocking at your door. That's a chilling thought, but it's entirely legal. Now, in order for these police requests to be legal, they must be narrow in their scope. They must identify specific locations and specific time frames for which they can draw from. The problem, though, is once this footage is in the hands of law enforcement, it's completely out of your control. What if they happen to find something completely unrelated to the emergency they're investigating? Maybe a car accident down the street, or even something more that might catch their eye. There have been instances where unrelated footage has been used in other criminal investigations. Footage where the actual camera owner would have never shared this with the police. The big takeaway here, if your security footage is being stored in the cloud, it's literally just a few clicks away from being shared with the police. So what are your options here if you don't feel comfortable with this arrangement? Many of us likely rely upon cloud storage because of all the convenience that it provides. I used to use cloud storage because it allowed me to have 24/7 access to my footage. It also acted as a backup in case one of my devices was damaged in some way, and it allowed me to share and review the footage whenever I wanted to. But then I learned convenience comes at a cost. When your footage is stored in the cloud, remember you're not the only one who has access to it. The security company technically holds all the keys to your footage. And if they choose to share it with the police, they can absolutely choose to do so. One more thing to keep in mind, law enforcement is smart about this. So many times they'll never even go to the homeowner about the footage. They'll go straight to Ring or Google Nest or whoever the provider is, and they'll just talk about the fact that this is an emergency situation and they really don't have time to gain the warrant right now. So they're going to need to share that information with the police immediately. Literally, no judge, no court order, just a request. And here's the real problem. In a rush to respond to this so-called emergency by the police, many companies get sloppy. Instead of just giving the officer the limited amount of information they requested, now you'll find many of these companies giving literally everything to the police officer that is on your footage. So it's crucial to understand what you are signing up for when you choose a cloud-based security system. Now, what if police decide not to ask for it, but now they decide to obtain a warrant? If police officers have probable cause to establish that a crime may have taken place on your property or that you have evidence specific to a crime, they could obtain a warrant from a judge that at this point you are required to provide any of the security footage, whether it's on a cloud storage device or whether it's on an SD card. Here's the kicker. Merely going offline by having none of this in the cloud doesn't save you from a warrant's request. In fact, usually when police have a warrant, not only are they going to take your footage, they're going to take your cameras, they're going to take everything. Now you might be thinking, that's okay, I'll just ask for it back after they're done with it. The problem is it's never really that straightforward. Let's say a police officer seizes your camera, your SD card, or all the information that's on the cloud. And It has nothing to do with you committing a crime, but this is evidence involved in another crime. They don't actually have to give any of the hardware back to you until the case is completely resolved. So don't forget, always ask to see the warrant. It's your right as the homeowner to demand to be able to review this warrant to determine what the scope is provided by the judge, by the signed warrant, so that the officer doesn't violate your privacy rights. In fact, based on the four corners of this warrant, it should clearly state exactly what the judge is allowing them to seize, and if they're seizing your camera or your footage, you have a right to know why and exactly what is being taken. In one case I worked on, my client literally had his entire home security system ripped out of his walls. All of the security as well as the actual storage was taken. Even some of it was there locally encrypted. And they took every bit of it. And it took months and months before he was ever able to get it back. And at some point he decided he had to just replace the entire system because he had no security. Police are never in a hurry to return your property, particularly if they think it's involved in an investigation. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect against unreasonable search and seizures, but in practice, it can be a long and frustrating process. And here's the other thing. Once your footage is in police hands, it can be copied and stored for future reference, even if the investigation is closed. So what can you do to protect yourself? Number one, know your rights. If police show up with a warrant, read it carefully. Make sure they are sticking to what is authorized within the actual four corners of the warrant. Second, consider what you're storing locally versus what is in the cloud. If you're really concerned about privacy, local storage with strong encryption is usually a better option. The third way your footage can end up in police hands is through voluntary registration programs. Many cities and police departments have active campaigns out trying to encourage both residents and businesses to register their cameras for police access. Sounds innocent, right? I mean, it's a way to help keep your neighborhood safe, right? Not so fast. It's always important to read the fine print. If you sign up for one of these voluntary registration programs, you are essentially allowing your home security system to become a police surveillance system. The police can literally tap a live feed into your home security system whenever they want to. And now you've also told them you have a security system, so it makes it very easy for them to be able to gain access to any footage you have. Let's say there's a crime in your neighborhood and you've registered your camera with the police. The police can look at their real-time crime center map and be able to see exactly where your camera is located, and they can decide to tap into your feed whenever they want. They may politely ask you if you can provide them the footage first, but if not, they can easily obtain a warrant and you'll be required to hand over your entire footage to the police. The decision to register your home security system with the police is always yours, but it should never be taken lightly. You're giving up some control of how your footage is used, and in some instances, you may actually be precluded from being able to share that information with the media. In fact, some voluntary registration programs have clauses within the contract that provide specifically that you are not allowed to share this information publicly, even though it's your footage. But let's be clear, there is another side to this. Having a voluntarily registered home security system in the hands of the police department could provide you more security. If criminals in the area know that you have an actual registered camera service through the police department, it could act as a deterrent to help eliminate that particular burglar or whoever he may be from deciding to try to enter into your home. But remember, it's always a balance between security versus privacy. Are you willing to trade a little bit of privacy in exchange for having a little bit more security in your neighborhood? Or would you rather keep your footage private, even if it means there's a little bit less security in your particular neighborhood? So on the pro side, voluntarily registering your cameras with law enforcement does help law enforcement quickly respond to potential crimes in your area. They know where the cameras are and they can immediately gain access to that footage to potentially catch a criminal. They also create a digital community watch program where it makes your entire neighborhood arguably a bit safer. But on the negative side, you're giving up most of your control over your home security system. You're essentially telling the police, here's where I record, you can tap into it whenever you want to, and you basically lose the ability to use this particular footage however you want to. And remember, once you've registered, that information is out there. Even if you change your mind, you can't unring the bell. The police department knows that you have cameras. They had previously been able to tap into those cameras, and they would then come either with a warrant or your consent to obtain access to your footage whenever they want. So finally, the big question, what do we do to protect our footage? For me, if I'm concerned about privacy, I stick to local storage over cloud storage. Another option is to choose systems with end-to-end encryption. And you would be the only one who actually has access to the decryption keys. Now, I want to know your comments below about this, particularly you security experts out there. But from what I understand, end-to-end encryption is one of the strongest tools to help protect your privacy for your home security system. With end-to-end encryption, not even the company that made your security camera can get access to your footage. That's the whole point. It's all encrypted so that only you can unlock it. The downside, you're likely to lose some features. You may not be able to preview a lot of the footage, and it'll be very difficult to actually share that footage with other people. If you're using Ring doorbell cameras, one of the options you can choose is to opt in to end-to-end encryption, but you must do this manually. This is not on by default, so it's important that you go into your settings and you turn this on. You must activate it if privacy is important to you. It's only if privacy is important to you, because the moment you do this, you will lose certain features. You will not be able to see a lot of this footage on other devices, and it's much more difficult to share it amongst other devices. Finally, it's important that you know your rights. If a police officer comes to your front door, knocks on your door, and asks if he can have your footage from your home security system, you can absolutely tell him no. If a police officer does not have a valid search warrant, you do not have to provide that information to them, unless we talked about earlier, there's an exigent circumstance or an emergency. Otherwise, what if an officer does have an actual search warrant? If so, read over the warrant. Make sure you understand it should specifically list the times and the locations for which that information should be available, and you can make sure and limit the scope of what they're able to take from your footage to limit it to that warrant. Lastly, be aware of the laws in your state. Many of these laws are federal, Supreme Court-based laws, but there can be variations to them from state to state. So it's important that you make sure and consider that. Your security system is there to protect you, but it's up to you to protect your own privacy. Now, what if I told you cops were using cameras you don't see to spy on your home? Check out this next video where I show you how to stop cops from spying on your home with cameras. See you over there.